Okay, so originally we did a quick demonstration of labeling these small glass containers on an Advent 310. And what we're going to go ahead and do is just finish those up and then do a changeover to this green label. Pretty much the same size. So we're just going to be quick just to show you how easy it is on the machine. But I'm going to run these through. What we went ahead and did is, because this is a foil label, we added an encapsulating spring to the overhead pressure arm. It doesn't slow you down, but it just allows more pressure to push the label into this cast glass, which has a lot of wrinkles on it and little bubbles. And with a thin label like this, we really need to kind of push that label and wrap it around as tightly as possible. Okay, and just like that, we did all those labels. Just pop these out. Turn it off here. And you can see they look really good. They're stretched on there really nicely. The overlap is quite good, within a 1/16 of an inch. So that looks fantastic. So now we're going to go ahead and do a changeover. Okay. So let the camera stay there. We used one of our part spin. It actually works really well. The key is just with this rollout plate. You might have to adjust it. I added a piece of foam just to lift it up a little bit that you could take off. But the machine is completely, you could do a lot of modifications. We have people that do rollout trays, boxes. There's quite a bit you could do. But there's the label feed path right there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm doing a mid-roll change. I'll roll out so I don't waste many labels if I'm using this roll of labels again. That's good enough. This pops out like a roll of toilet paper. Spring loaded. And then when you have enough of it on there, you just go ahead and pull it, rip it off. It has a slit right there. And it just goes back into place. There's little notches right there. Very straightforward. Now we need to deal with the label supply. This is the mandrel that holds the roll of labels. We release the brake arm spring right here. Very simple. And once it's released, we can move this mandrel very easily. You can see as soon as I let go of it, it breaks it. And that's one of the most important components on this machine, especially when dealing with small diameter containers and short labels like your application. Now this is the same label size, so what's really important is to use one of these guides. Keep that in place and just remove one. Or you could put little marks on the mandrel. A lot of people use a Sharpie marker. And they'll just put a little mark there. And then you want to slide it off. Now, when dealing with small labels like this, you'll see, normally, let's orient this correctly. If you were just to slide that on, you can see how it moves really freely on that 3-inch fiber core. And that's why we have these clips here. And it's very important that when you slide your roll of labels on there, that the clips bite in to that core so it doesn't slip. If it does slip, even when it's on one of these clips, you'll have to add a piece of tape or some labels to the inside of that fiber core to make it nice and snug. Let me just demonstrate that again. See how it's loose? When it goes over that clip, it gets nice and snug. And the reason why that's so important is if this slides, if it's not tight, it defeats the brake arm. The brake arm will stop this metal mandrel, but the roll of labels, because it's not biting into these clips, will begin to accelerate. And you'll get more than one label onto the container. Generally, that's the symptom, or you'll get a little pre-feeding, like a quarter to half of the label to be fed out. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Since we kept one guide on there, we're pretty much going to be in the exact same position. So changeover is going to be really quick and easy. So towards me, you put in the axle first, lift up on the brake arm, and then you'll see that white, the part of the axle with the white spacer, that falls into this open frame there. And just falls in. And make sure that you're oriented correctly. Make sure the labels are coming towards the back of the machine. Facing out. And then we just go ahead and thread the machine. Wherever there's these white webbing guides, that's where you put the labels over. There's a guide in the manual too. A lot of people make the mistake of putting the labels over this supporting rod. It goes underneath, right above the solenoid. Now this part's a little tricky because we have a small diameter container. So just open up your carriage so you can get a little bit more room. And then once you have room, it's fairly easy. Well, this one's curling down, but just get your fingers on it and pull forward. Okay. Then you take out the peel bar. Peel bar is easy too. Lift up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the guides, just so we can see this a little bit better. And we'll show you starting from scratch. Okay. So this is the peel bar. Teflon tape stays on there. Sharp edge stays up and towards the white tires. So you put the backing material over it, and then it goes back into position. Just like that. And then we have a 4-inch drive roller and an 8-inch pinch roller. What we're going to go ahead and do is make a little point, turn on the machine, and just put it between those two rollers, and it will kind of almost grab it. If it needs a little help, you can press on the trigger. But the idea is to have enough of it go down till it reaches the backing material, or the rewind mandrel, right here. And you might have to peel off a couple labels. We're looking for about 30 inches to get to the bottom here, and wrap it around at least twice, as you can see here. Now, if I were to go ahead and turn on the machine, you would see labels probably start popping out, just like that. Why that happened is because I didn't reattach the brake arm spring. And that's a common mistake. So make sure you reattach that. And what that does is that activates the white strap and will stop the mandrel from moving, from accelerating. And a good way of testing that is turn it on, grab the label. You can see it stops, and we can test that. Let me take off this spring. It just slides off, so I can move this out of the way. And the way of testing that is just hitting the trigger. You want to get about 50% of the label to be fed out. And you can adjust that with the timer, the pre-feed timer. That's good. That's about 33%. And it should be consistent. Exactly the same place. And the other thing I'm looking for is when I pull it out, I can feel a lot of back pressure. And that's good because that's what allows the label to be wrapped around there nice and tight. Okay? So I'll reattach the spring here. Now if you're doing a larger diameter container, you could probably take that spring out. It doesn't need to be there. Let me get the roll-out plate. We'll put that back into position. Oh, and just to show you how that's how the labels are fed through again. So everything's been set up. Should take you less than probably about 5 minutes to do a changeover. I'll put this here. Okay, this hooks on. And now we'll adjust for our container. I have a couple of them here. Bring my plate, my table. Okay, obviously right now it's going to fall in. This is probably like for a 4-inch diameter container. One of the neat little tricks is you could get back into position really quickly by just turning this and then seeing when you have a gap on your overhead pressure arm. And probably a little bit more. About right there. Okay, which is good. This one, it looks like a little bit smaller diameter. So first thing I'm going to do is open up the overhead pressure arm, and I'm going to aim it. Based on the backing material, I think I want it to be about right there. Okay, and you can see it's just hovering over the peel bar by about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Doesn't have to be exact. And that's when I can bring in my guides. Just simple thumb locks. You don't want it touching, you just want it close. Probably within 1/16 of an inch. You want a little bit of wiggle room. That's so it doesn't bind. So that looks good. Now our overhead pressure arm, because this one is not actually touching, as you can see there. So it's not putting any pressure onto the container. So what we do is we take our Allen wrench tool, which comes with the machine, loosen it up, and you'll see it falls on. And we can move it left or right. A lot of flexibility there. That's good. And before I tighten it up, I put a little bit of a gap with the stop. And give it a good tight. Make sure it's nice and tight. And what that does is I don't have to lift this up each and every time. When I push it in, it will lift up. But this is where I'll reattach the spring. And again, you're going to have to make sure these are nice and snug, because if they're not, the spring will begin to loosen this up. Okay. Now what some people do is let's see how this works. We'll insert. And sometimes the first one will be the hardest, because you have a little bit higher angle of attack. But we'll go ahead and push that in. And that was pretty good. Let's check our work. Okay, now this label is in the different copy position. The other one was in copy position 4. This label's in copy position 3. So it's very easy to work with that. It's a good thing to demo. Okay, so the container needs to be facing the other way, copy position 3. So again, just go ahead, adjust our guides. Just simple thumb locks. Okay. Now our overhead pressure arm, it's fine. And we can move it over a little bit if we wanted to, but I think that's fine. You can peel the label off. I'm going to leave it on just so you can see the difference. Okay, so go ahead and insert. Okay. 1, 2. Let's see what we have here. You can see now it's correctly oriented. Looks really good. Not a bubble or a wrinkle. You can see the overlap is right on. So it's very, very accurate. So that looks really great. Now we have 2 more and we'll end the video. But I just want to point out 2 more adjustments. The rule of thumb is to make sure that there's white tires where the label is being applied. If you had a taller container, just to show you, you could slide these white tires left and right. The important part about your setup, and we have other videos that you can see, is you want to try to avoid having a white tire on these guides, because ultimately what happens is people knock them down and then they'll get marked up. But you also want a white tire wherever there's a label material, because that's going to help push the label and get it wrapped around there nice and tight. So you can slide those left and right if you wanted to. And same thing with the white tires. But the white tires are a little bit different. They're press fit. So if you need to adjust them, you take your second smallest Allen wrench tool and you just push them side to side. And you can see I'm just lining it up. Just lining it up on the backing material. And that's a really good rule of thumb. If you have a white tire wherever there's a label, based on the label backing, your setup is going to be pretty much dead on each and every time. Now the one thing I would do, possibly, since we have an encapsulating spring here, is I might make my gap just a little bit smaller, just to make it, the idea, it might just make it a little bit easier to push in. And it does. Just that small amount. Okay? And then you could really just go ahead and fly through it. push that out. And that's that. The Advent 310, labeling these containers. And you can see those look absolutely perfect. Great overlap. Very, very straightforward and easy to work with. Any questions? We can reach at 800-846-7716. Thank you.